Now, you're welcome back. Joe Molloy here. Damien Delaney with me on the football show this evening. So we've talked Newcastle. Manchester United play Liverpool this Sunday. We have commentary here on Off the Ball. Manchester United going into this game 4 defeats in 7, lost to Leicester 4-2. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was chatting after the game, and I think you can sense here there's a backs to the wall quality about how he's feeling. And just listen out. I mean, even he's conceding there's something off with the balance in this team. Here's Solskjaer after that 4-2 defeat.
Over the international break, we've had a good time to see what's gone wrong lately, because one result in isolation, that can be say look margins, but then we've got too many games now that we've lost points, so we need to look at the whole setup of the team, whole balance of the team. Maybe something has to give.
Is it a bit of a wake-up call?
Shouldn't be, because we've had wake-up calls before. So every game, every point in the Premier League, you've got to fight for. You've got to win second balls. You've got to tackle. You've got to block. You've got to win headers. And in key moments today, we just didn't block or defend well enough, or even attack well enough. Atalanta
next to get it out of the system. They will presumably play a similar way to Leicester. It'll be pretty fast and furious. It's fast and furious, and every game's a test of character here. Especially now, it's an examination of character, staff, players, everyone around here, that we stick together and fight on Wednesday night. Now, this is starting to come apart a little bit for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. The team, if anyone didn't catch it, Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof was in. There was no Varane. It was Lindelof, Maguire, Shaw, Pogba and Matic as their two midfielders. Greenwood, Bruno, Fernandes and Sancho, and then Ronaldo leading the line. Expand on what you think he's talking about there when he says balance. Like he was alluding to a lack of work rate and a lack of tackling and a lot of the basics not happening. When he says balance, what I interpret that as is an acknowledgement that Ronaldo's not going to do much work, and so how many more passengers can we have, i.e. the likes of Pogba not doing too much work? It sounded to me like someone who's thinking of hooking some big players very, very soon.
He won't do that. There's no way he'll do that. That would be that would only just fast forward the decision an awful lot if he starts doing that. Look, I'm not going to criticise Man United because there's no need to know. It's self-evident of what we're watching. He's not the guy. I've been saying it for the best part of 15 or 16 months. He's just not the guy. I think there's a complete and utter lack of cohesion in Manchester United. There's a lack of discipline. And I think that stems massively from the manager, because the manager is the one who sets the standards, the one manager who ultimately holds people accountable. And if you don't run back, there has to be consequences. If you don't get into shape, you have to be held accountable. Now, if the manager's not giving him those instructions, then it's his fault. If he is giving him those instructions and they're not doing it, it's still his fault. The gaps in the team are incredible. Like the back four, Harry Maguire always drops off, and it creates a huge pocket of space in front of the back four and behind the midfield players. It's very, very difficult to be a midfield player for Manchester United. I'm kind of going to go off on a little kind of odd one now, and I feel sorry for Fred. He's not a fantastic player. I'm not defending him in any way, shape or form, but he's put in some awful situations. I know he didn't play on Saturday against Leicester. It was Matic, but it's the same thing. The gap behind them versus the gap in front of them is too big. So you've got the likes of Bruno, who is a free spirit. He just does what he wants. Does no responsibility on him. He's basically told the pitch, go and enjoy himself, join in, track back if you want to track back, do what you want to do. So the space the midfield players have to cover is far, far too big. And all that stems from Harry Maguire dropping off, because that's what he does. He hasn't got the mobility to hold a high line up the pitch. So if you can keep a high line, right, and condense the space, the midfield players then only have to worry about the space in front of them. Then they don't have to worry about behind them. But too often, Manchester United get caught in behind that midfield and the back four. So that's what he's talking about with balance. And the reason he plays two central midfield players in Fred and McTominay, because that's his go-to one, is because two players defensively can fill that space. As soon as you go with one, and especially when one of the two is Pogba, who's a bit of a joiner-inner as well, doesn't really think defensively when they have the ball. He's not thinking, if we lose this, how are we looking? So it's very, very difficult for one number 6 to cover the amount of ground that's been asked to cover. The back four need to hold a higher line. When they signed Varane, everybody thought that Varane was going to be the one that would help United hold that high line. His pace would help cover round. But it's not going to happen, because Harry Maguire's instincts, his natural instinct, is to drop off. When he's asked a question, insofar as when he's in space, he'll drop off, and it creates problems. That's almost like, if you ever held a bag of sand up and stuck a knife in the bottom of a bag of sand, all the sand empties out the bottom. That's what it's like when Harry Maguire drops off. The whole team almost just gets sucked backwards, and the spaces then are too big. Bruno doesn't get back into defensive shape often enough. And the two central midfield players, and he's going to go back to that as sure as anything. I know he's going to, if Fred and McTominay are available, he's going to go back to the two of those, because it's his best chance. It's not going to be pretty, it's not going to be nice, it's going to be soak up pressure, counter-attack, but it's going to be stuff that got them results in the big games, the 0-0s last year that they got, the couple of 1-0 wins they got in big games last year, because the job's on the line now. And he's tried to open it up and go one defensive midfield player, but they just haven't got the personnel to do it.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work. And I mean, as you said, especially when Pogba's one of those two, like, he makes these very theatrical attempts to tackle. He like plants his foot. He puts himself out of the game deliberately. He did it a few times, and Leicester got shots away, as opposed to a really kind of honest player would jockey and stay with the opponent and try and get a block in. And Pogba puts himself out of the game. He almost says, well, I've tried. And it's very theatrical, and then they're in on the back four. So, but
I feel outside, it's very hard for him though. There's nothing more soul destroying for any midfield player. Ask any midfielder played at a good level. When a ball gets passed down the side of them, they spin their head round and they see the two centre backs 25 yards away.
No, I get that as well. So let's go to that core problem then. How slow is Maguire? Is he correct, for his own sake, for instance, to drop back a little bit? Like, if Maguire plays a high line, are Manchester United goosed against Premier League pace?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so he has to drop then?
He has to, yes.
Okay.
But he takes the whole team with it.
So what's the solution then? Is there no way that they can say, look, they're not going to say this as explicitly as this in the dressing room, Harry's going to drop deep because Harry's not very fast. Therefore, we all need to be compact and move up and down as a unit a bit more. Yeah. Teams can sit very deep and be compact and they get away with it. Why do Manchester United have each line so far apart from each other?
Because
yeah, go on.
Nobody, I won't say nobody, but it's very rare you find teams play with wingers now, chalk on the hill wingers, and Manchester United do. So now you've got Sancho on the left touchline, 25 yards, 30 yards to Ronaldo, then another 25, 30 yards to Greenwood, right? Then in the middle of all that, you've got Bruno, who just floats around and does what he wants. It's very, very, very spread out. So when you win the ball back against Manchester United, there's lots of space. And the two midfield players, or the one midfield player in Fred, and let's say, Matic and Pogba for the sake of the game on Saturday, all of a sudden now have three players that are spread out over 60, 70 yards in front of them. Bruno, no one really knows where he is or where he's going to be. And then you turn around and you got your back four or 25 yards behind him. That is a vast amount of space.
Yeah.
An incredible amount of space for anybody to cover.
Yeah.
Ultimately, he said he's gone on record before saying he wants to play with wingers because, that's the Manchester United way. But I think a way that will go to alleviate that is tuck the wide players in. Ask Bruno to be a little bit more defensively, put restrictions on him. You have to demand that of him now. That's the accountability that I'm talking about. That he can't just go where he wants. He needs to play within a structure. He has to. And then you might be able to get away with a little bit more compact because the wide players are a little bit narrower. Then you'll get away with Ronaldo not running because right in the minute now it's being shown up so much because he's standing in oceans of space and he's not running because he doesn't want to run. At every other club or Portugal, he's got players around him that will do his running for him. So make the pitch smaller when you're out of possession. That would be, for me, the number one thing. Now, the back four, this is why Liverpool can counter-press so well. It's because the back four are on the halfway line, and now you're just pressing in half a pitch.
Yeah. And
the ball, we spoke about this before, the ball over the top is the only out ball you have against Liverpool. That's very, very difficult to do. Every team, every world-class team now holds a high line. From Bayern Munich to Man City to Liverpool, all of them do it.
There's quite a few problems there to sort out by Wednesday and then Sunday against Liverpool. That's fairly significant surgery on the way they've been playing for 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. But the reason he got away with it last year is because he stuck with the Fred McTominay partnership, and that limits the damage. And Manchester United are a team packed with world-class players, and if you can be defensively solid, Bruno's going to get you a goal. Cristiano's going to get you a goal. Greenwood's going to get you a goal. They have goals in them. The problem is they keep conceding, or they keep giving up large portions of games. So he's going to go back. I can guarantee you, he's going to go back to 2 defensive midfield players. That's the balance that he's talking about. And he's going to go back to counter-attacking. And he's going to almost stick 2 fingers up to everyone and go, I don't care what it looks like. I'm going to lose my job very, very soon unless I can get some results. Results are the only thing that can keep people off my back at the moment. And by hook or by crook, I'm going to get them. And I don't care what the aesthetics look like.
And these very significant problems that you're talking about, exacerbated then by the stupid goals they're giving away as well. Like Harry Maguire waiting for a bus, I was going to say. That pass to him, and then, the set piece concessions as well. If they're that open in general play, they can't afford to be giving away these stupid goals either. So it's one problem on top of another right now.
But I think that those problems are a symptom of the underlying issues. It's the easiest thing in the world, and every manager has said it, and it's the most used excuse. Oh, we're giving away silly goals. If you're giving away silly goals every week, it's not like individual mistakes. If you're giving 2 or 3 every week, there's some fundamental underlying issues that are forcing players into making these mistakes. That there's a lack of confidence. They don't feel comfortable. Harry Maguire obviously has his issues with injury. Maybe he shouldn't have played the game. But again, that's the manager's decision. He picked him and he got that one wrong. But look, that's enough of it. Look, everyone knows how I feel about that. But what I would say is that, like, from a positive point of view, is it's salvageable for Manchester United. We're only in October. They're only 4 or 5 points off it. They're still in the Champions League. But if they wait any longer, I mean, their season, in the next 3-4 weeks, they could be out of the Premier League because they're going to be so far adrift they're never going to get it back. And they could be out of the Champions League, or they could finish second and get a tough draw. I mean, if they fixed it now and they were like, if they were as ruthless as Roman Abramovich, they just pull the trigger and get it done now and salvage the season. And that's what he did last year with Frank Lampard, and Chelsea got something out of the season. If they drag their heels and they wait, it's not going to change. It's been 4 years and it's the same stuff. Isn't that the very definition of insanity, Joe? Doing the same stuff over and over again, expecting different results? It's not going to change. The die is cast. The only way it's going to change is if somebody makes a change. And I think another manager can get an awful lot more out of the squad. And I just hope, for Manchester United's sake, that they pull the trigger and get on with their season.
So Liverpool come into town then on Sunday at Old Trafford. 5-0 win at the weekend against Claudio Ranieri's Watford. Mo Salah is in form of life territory. To be fair to him, he's been in pretty amazing form for a long time now. 29 years of age. I wanted to ask you about this notion of a late developer, because at 20 or 21, Salah was not destined for this level of greatness. Jurgen Klopp said after the game he's probably the best player in the world right now in current form. And I was reminding myself of his career. So 29 years of age. His first move to Europe was to Basel. Chelsea bought him for, it was 11 million in 2014 when he was 22 years of age. So clearly he's catching the eye. 22, 11 million. I mean, we're not talking about a complete dud here. But his debut season used very sparingly 10 Premier League games across 2013-14. I don't know if you remember coming across him then. 3 Premier League games the following season. And then he goes on loan to Fiorentina, goes on loan to Roma. 15-16, he scores 15 goals for Roma and gets a permanent move there for £15 million. And then the following year, they finish second in Serie A and he scores 19 goals. So Liverpool, on the back of his 19 goals in Serie A, buy him for, in fairness, club record 37 million. But I don't think anyone expected him to take off the way he has. And straight away, that first season, 32 goals in 36 Premier League games. Golden Boot, PFA Players Player of the Year. He comes third in the Ballon d'Or. And then 2019, joint top Premier League scorer again, wins the Champions League. 2020, they win the Premier League. He scores 23 goals in all competitions. And even last season, Liverpool's form obviously was horrible. But Salah still managed 31 goals in all competitions. And now here we are. He's age 29 and he's got 10 goals in 10 games, 7 in 8 Premier League games, and just seems to be off the charts. I don't think when he pitched up at Chelsea and was 23 and then 24 and then went off to Italy on loan, even allowing for Chelsea being difficult for certain young players, Kevin De Bruyne jumps to mind, I don't think anyone saw him coming back like this and doing what he's done in English football. So this notion of the late developer is a really interesting one in football, and how certain players blossom at certain stages.
Yeah, it's also a kind of a nod that not everybody's a child prodigy. there are child prodigies out there, and people are destined from greatness from a very, very young age. But also, players can learn and get better, and that's what he's proven. I mean, he was obviously talented. That's why he got that move to Basel, and then obviously done well enough there. Somebody saw something in him, and everybody hopes that he'll develop to the level that he has developed to. But he's learned, and he's got better and better and better, and he's 29 years of age now. And I would agree with Jurgen Klopp that right now he is the best player in the world. I mean, he is in the form of his life, and he's making it extremely difficult for Liverpool to sell him or let him go. Because I know Liverpool don't want to give him the type of contract that would reflect his status as the best player in the world, because that's probably the last thing Liverpool want to do, to break a wage structure. But I tell you, he's making it very, very, very difficult. The board every day are thinking, okay, we might have to do this, and that's going to bring a whole host of problems further down the line. So, listen, I'm delighted for him. He's a fabulous player. He's in the form of his life, and it's a joy to watch him every week.
His agent arrived into England over the weekend, presumably for talks, and presumably to say, fellas, 500 grand a week, take it or leave it. So that will be interesting. I don't know if you remember coming up against him at Chelsea at all or not, but
no, never do. No.
Any players that you played with surprise you? Because I mean, it is that incredibly tricky thing to predict in football. I'm sure you must have seen someone that you thought, well, he's of a level, and then a couple of years later you had egg on your face.
No, because I suppose I would put it back to my own situation. I developed late, and I learned the game as well. So I would never write anybody off at any age. Everybody's capable. I mean, if you get to a certain level, to Basel or Chelsea, you clearly have something.
Sure.
I mean, there's some level of talent, and somebody has seen something in you, especially to pay 11 million quid to get him from Basel. But then it's about developing it. It's not guaranteed, and many players do kind of change hands for money, and it never happens. But there's lots of players that develop late, lots of players that you think aren't, really very, they have the attributes, they have all the ingredients, but they can't quite put it together. That's much more common. But if a player is switched on enough and is willing to learn and has a certain mentality, he absolutely can learn about how to get the best out of himself physically. He can learn tactically, but then of course he has to be put in the right system to suit him. Yeah. And I think if you took Mo Salah and put him in Man United's team, I think he probably would struggle as well. Standing out there on the wing on his own. I mean, he benefits from having Trent Alexander-Arnold. He benefits from being able to make these internal runs. He benefits from having Bobby Firmino go short, which takes two centre-backs 2 or 3 steps forward, creates those pockets of space. So Liverpool is a well-oiled machine, and they've bought certain type of players for a certain type of system, and it works.
Did you have a sudden spurt of development in your career, or was it always just pretty steady improve year on year?
Yeah, it was just gradual, because I came up through the divisions, and I remember the start of every season when you gained a promotion, you realise you were going up a level and you needed to learn. And I always approached every season with a mentality of like, okay, this is new. And every game I played was pretty much, okay, you done okay today, but you done X, Y, and Z good, but you done A, B, and C wrong. And then you're trying to improve and learn and adjust. And then you're at an age where you're trying to have the confidence to say that you belong here. And then I just treated it the same way when we went in the Premier League the first year. I just thought, it's a game-by-game basis, a half-by-half almost, where it's like, okay, you need to learn very, very quickly. And I did. And I had an open mind. I didn't arrive in the Premier League thinking that, I'm the finished article and I'm good enough to be here. I knew I had to learn, and I had to learn very, very, very quickly. And a lot of the times, the best way to learn is to make mistakes. But if you make mistakes, you're not going to be given the opportunity to learn, because you're not going to play. So a lot of the mistakes I was making, I not necessarily get punished for. But when I watched games back, I realised that, if that midfield player had seen my positioning there, he could have picked me off. It wasn't a great position. So that type of analysis, that type of, it's easy to say that when I got caught for a goal, he should have done this, he done this and he shouldn't have. But it's kind of the ones where you realise and you're really critical to the point of, I got away with that there. That cross didn't come in, or that pass didn't get played there, but that's a really, really poor position. You should be here. That type of analysis and that level of learning. So that's what I was like. But Salah has obviously just gotten better and more confident year on year, and he has developed, no doubt.
No, he sure has. So you found being able to watch yourself on TV was a big help in your development?
Yeah, watching games back and remembering certain situations in games and kind of putting it in the back pocket for afterwards. Somebody would make a run and I'd get attracted, and then I'd kind of realise, oh God, you're out of position here. There's a hole somewhere. Maybe you shouldn't be here. but then the midfielder would check out and go somewhere else, and I'd kind of recover my position. But it was always like, okay, put that in the back pocket and watch that later. And I always remembered that. And then afterwards, I would kind of watch the games back, and I'd realise, no, you were a bit critical on yourself there. You were right. Then there's other situations where I didn't realise it. So it was just that level of learning and positioning, and just ultra critical of every decision I made.
Yeah, I can see how for a defender that kind of analysis is really helpful. I'd love to interview or hear Salah even asked if he used tape in the same way. Like, I'm not sure if, you know, the instinctive brilliance we saw for his goal, for instance, I don't know if that's honed by watching TV or himself back necessarily. I get it with positional play and should I track that runner or should I not, or how does that look on screen, but he's almost just blossomed in this like self-made way. I suspect, and who knows, but it's from working at it each day in training, getting a bit better and a bit better each day in training. That's how I think he would have done it over the last 7-8 years.
And I think, listen, and it would be remiss not to mention, the system just suits him down to the ground. I mean, I can't say that enough. Like, I know a lot of people say he's a world-class player, but it fits him. It just, every attribute that he has is catered for in that system in Liverpool. And as I said earlier, you can take him out of that and put him somewhere else, and he might not be as effective because other teams might do something different. But the way Liverpool's set up, it's tailor-made for him, and that's why he's blossoming to the level that he's blossomed at as well. And I think he would do well to remember that when it comes time to move on. That maybe an extra bit of money to go somewhere else might not necessarily be worth it, because I'm pretty sure at Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp, they're only going to get better and better.
No, screw you, dude. He's gone to Newcastle for $2 million a week and the training grounds in London, and that's just the way it's going to be. And he's going in January. By the way, before you go, other end of the spectrum to Salah's development is Wayne Rooney. There's a new Wayne Rooney documentary coming out on Amazon. I've no idea if it's meant to be good or not, but I suspect be watching it one way or another. He's such an interesting case study in that his numbers are off the charts in terms of number of games played, goals scored internationally at Manchester United, not least even at United, where he would be thrown out onto the left wing to do running that Ronaldo would not do for a period when Rooney was probably at the peak of his career. Phenomenal. Like, it's just phenomenal. And yet, I think the instinctive sense people would have of Rooney would be, didn't fulfill the genius potential we saw from the 18, 19-year-old when he was almost on a par with Ronaldo. And the comparison with Ronaldo probably hurts him because they were similar age, same team. One went stratospheric, all-time great. And I think at 18, 19, 20, there was probably a hope, certainly in English minds, that Rooney would be all-time great, you know, top 10 of all-time potential. So you would have come up against him, I'm sure. The Rooney one is, like I said, opposite end of the spectrum to Salah, and I suspect history will judge him incredibly well, but those who watched him come on the scene and play through his career, and they see the pictures of, you know, late nights out and maybe not looking after himself a touch, and you wonder what could have been. So your thoughts on Rooney?
I love him. I think he's one of the best that I've ever played against. He had everything, character, personality, skill, dogged, rough, hungry, aggressive, everything. He probably doesn't get the credit that Ronaldo gets because of the stuff you said. He has a list pretty long of indiscretions, and he wasn't as aesthetically pleasing as Ronaldo. A lot of his goals were just brute force. I mean, he was just such a physical guy, and that's probably why aesthetically he's just not as easy on the eye. But for me, I think he is one of the best, if not the best in Premier League history. He really is. I mean, maybe the best is a bit of a stretch, but he's definitely top 5 greatest Premier League players of all time. He has everything, and I can't say enough about him. I think he's brilliant, and he's a tremendous fella as well. He was no difficulty insofar as to play against. You know, he wasn't one that would be mouthing off or anything like that. He was quite, I won't say nice, but you know, he was reasonable. Yeah,
respectful pro doing his
exactly.
Yeah, I think he does get a hard deal because, again, I think at the Euros and how he burst on the scene, and it just seemed like the possibilities were endless. But it's so hard to live up to that potential. Jeez, I mean, like, he was being called he did, I know, but he was being called and yet at the same time there were periods in his career where, like, he was 30 and people were writing pieces saying, what's happened to Rooney, you know?
I disagree. Listen, his numbers stack up.
Sure.
You know, I think in time there probably will be a bit more praise for him.
Yeah.
Perhaps he might even get a statue somewhere. I mean, he's England's all-time leading goal scorer.
Yeah.
he didn't win any major tournament with England. That'll probably stop him getting a statue. But I think at Manchester United, he should have something. When you look at what Henry has done for Arsenal, he is a statue. But I do think Rooney has been a wonderful player. Maybe a statue at Man United might be a bit of a stretch, but
all-time scorer.
Yeah, that type of recognition. I mean, Man United have a litany of stars, I suppose, that kind of altered the course of the club. They're the ones that get the statues. But he definitely will be remembered very fondly from Manchester United point of view. And I think in time, once all the indiscretions are kind of forgotten about, he will be.
Yeah. No, totally. It's just an interesting one. I deliberately use the word, it's an instinctive kind of sense you'd have of Rooney, because I think when you give it a bit more thought, you have to kind of conclude, no, actually, geez, I think the boy done good, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely fulfilled his potential, and that's all you can ask of anybody.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah. Time is pretty much against us. We are done. I was going to ask you about Stephen Kenny in Ireland, but we'll do that. We hadn't really talked to you since last week, but we'll do that another time. There are big games obviously coming against Portugal and Luxembourg, so we'll do that in due course. In the meantime, great to get your thoughts and all that. Pleasure, Damien. We'll talk to you again soon. Cheers, my man. Thank you. Thanks. That was Damien Delaney with us on the Football Show this evening, which was, of course, brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.